The smell of burnt oil never really leaves a place like that. It gets into the concrete, into the walls, into the back of your throat, and it stays there long after the last bike rolls out and the lights go off. Tristan Morel was 23 years old and already owed $11,000 to a bank that had been patient exactly as long as it needed to be. The garage had been his uncle's, a squat, half-windowed building on the edge of Sudbury, Ontario, wedged between a closed laundromat and a gravel lot where someone had been promising to build something for 6 years. His uncle Fernand had left it to him, not because Tristan was the obvious choice, but because he was the only one who had ever actually wanted it. The others in the family had looked at the place the way you look at a stray cat. Something that needs help but not from you. Tristan had taken it seriously from the start. He'd repainted the sign himself, touched up the bay doors, learned every name on every shelf. He was the kind of mechanic who would lie on the floor for an extra 20 minutes, not because something was broken, but because something didn't feel right. His hands knew the difference between a problem and a near problem, and he had been raised to respect the second kind more than the first. It was a Tuesday in late October when the knock came. Not a ring of the service bell, a knock. 3 deliberate knocks on the metal frame of the open bay door, the kind that expects to be heard and doesn't apologize for it. Tristan slid out from under a '98 Silverado and looked up. The man standing in the light was large in the way that certain men are large, not just in body but in the space they seem to occupy. He wore a leather vest with patches Tristan didn't need to read to understand. His beard was iron gray. His eyes were the color of old asphalt, flat and still, and they moved around the shop the way a person moves around a room they've been in before, even if they haven't. His name was Reginald Bouchard. Most people called him Ridge. He was the road captain of the Northern Shield MC, one of the oldest independent clubs in Northern Ontario. He was 51 years old. He had buried 2 brothers and 1 president, and had never once left the road for longer than a funeral. "They told me you're good," Ridge said. He didn't say who had told him. He didn't say good at what. He didn't need to. "I try to be," Tristan said. Ridge nodded once, the way a man nods when the answer is acceptable but not yet enough. He walked back out to the lot and Tristan followed. The motorcycle was on a flatbed. A 1953 Panhead, the kind of bike that stopped being made before most mechanics had been born. Chrome that had gone dull in patches. A fuel tank with a small dent near the left seam, worn smooth the way dents get when someone has run their thumb over them for decades. The bike had weight to it, even sitting still on the trailer. The kind of weight that belongs to something that has been places and carried things and is not done yet. "She's been running rough," Ridge said. 3 shops told me it's the engine, that it's time." He paused. He didn't look at Tristan. He looked at the bike. "I don't believe them." Tristan walked around the trailer slowly. He didn't touch it yet. He just looked. There are things a mechanic learns to see before they learn to explain what they're seeing. It's not magic. It's just pattern recognition built over years of seeing what goes wrong and what goes wrong underneath what goes wrong. Tristan had been in a garage since he was 12 years old, handing his uncle tools before he knew the names of them, learning the sounds that mattered and the sounds that didn't. He crouched near the rear wheel. He looked at the left side panel. He stood up and looked at the exhaust. "When did the rough running start?" he asked. "August. Before or after a trip?" Ridge looked at him then. "After a long one down to Montreal and back, 1,400 kilometers. Tristan nodded slowly. "I'll need a few days with her." "You've got 2. That night, after Ridge left and the flatbed was gone and the Panhead sat in the middle of the bay under the fluorescent lights, Tristan started at the beginning. Not with the engine, with everything else first. He had learned that lesson early. When people tell you it's the engine, check everything but the engine. He worked until 2 in the morning. He went home, slept 4 hours, and came back. What he found slowly. It was not the kind of thing that announces itself. It was the kind of thing that hides under other things and waits. The carburetor had been recently serviced, too recently, and not well. Someone had been in there. Not to fix something, but to adjust something. Tristan took it apart carefully, piece by piece, laying everything on a clean cloth in the order it came out. The float was set wrong, not by much, just enough. But that wasn't the only thing. He found it in the fuel line next. A small, almost imperceptible crimp near the lower junction. Not a manufacturing defect. Not wear. Deliberate. The kind of thing that would cause a bike to run rough on long rides, to hesitate on the highway, to lose power at speed in exactly the way that could on the right road at the right moment, become something far worse than a mechanical inconvenience. Tristan sat back on his stool. He stayed there for a long time. He was 23 years old and had $11,000 of debt and a garage that operated on a margin, thin enough that a bad month could become a closing month. He had no illusions about what the Northern Shield MC was. He had grown up in Sudbury. He knew the stories. The way everyone knew the stories, not with fear exactly, but with the awareness that certain things in this world operate on their own rules and do not particularly care for yours. The man who had brought him this bike was not someone you called with bad news and expected good outcomes. And yet, he thought about the float. He thought about the crimp in the fuel line. He thought about 1,400 kilometers, Montreal and back, and what could have happened on the 400 at night, at speed, when the power cut out at the wrong moment. He thought about the three other shops that had looked at this bike, what they had seen or what they had chosen not to see. Tristan was not the kind of person who could hold something like that and stay quiet. He had tried twice in his life to be that person, and it had never worked. Not because he was brave, exactly, but because the weight of it was always worse than whatever came after. He called the number Ridge had left him. It rang 4 times. Then, "Talk, it's Tristan," from the garage. Silence, not the silence of someone distracted. The silence of someone who has learned to let the other person finish. "I found something," Tristan said, "and I need you to come in. I can't explain this over the phone. I need to show you." Another pause, longer this time. "Tomorrow," Ridge said. 8 o'clock. The call ended. Tristan put the phone down on the workbench and looked at the Panhead under the lights. It was a beautiful machine. The kind of thing built in an era when people made objects to last because there was no other option. When every part was chosen with the understanding that someone's life would depend on it continuing to work. Someone had decided it didn't matter anymore. He didn't sleep much that night. Ridge arrived at 7:45. He came alone, which surprised Tristan. He walked into the dock at the edge of the clean cloth where everything had been laid out, and he looked at it the way a surgeon might look at something removed from a body, with attention and without flinching. "Walk me through it," Ridge said. Tristan walked him through it. He started with the carburetor. He explained what he'd found, what the float position meant, how it would affect performance over distance. He did not suggest intent yet. He let the facts speak in the order they appeared. Then he picked up the fuel line and pointed to the crimp. The shop went quiet. Not the quiet of someone confused. The quiet of someone who is very carefully setting something down inside themselves and making sure it doesn't break when it lands. "How long would it take?" Ridge asked. His voice was even, carefully even. Tristan knew what he was asking. At highway speed, depends on the road, the load. But if the power dropped at the wrong time, he stopped. You'd have maybe 3 seconds to react. Ridge looked at the fuel line in Tristan's hand. He did not look at Tristan. "The 3 shops," he said finally. It was not a question. "I can't speak to what they saw. Can you speak to what this took to find?" "Someone had to be looking for it specifically," Tristan said. "Otherwise you'd pass it." "I almost passed it. I went back twice." Ridge nodded once. He pulled out his phone. He stepped to the far side of the bay. He spoke quietly and briefly, and then he put the phone back in his pocket and came back to the workbench. "Fix it," he said. "Everything you found, fix it right, I will. And don't mention this to anyone until I tell you otherwise." Tristan met his eyes. Understood. For the next 36 hours, Tristan rebuilt what needed to be rebuilt and replaced what needed to be replaced. He sourced a period-correct float from a parts dealer in Toronto who specialized in vintage American iron. He replaced the fuel line entirely. He went over everything twice. Not because Ridge had asked him to, but because the bike deserved it. Because someone had decided this machine was disposable, and Tristan was constitutionally incapable of leaving that decision standing. When he was finished, he road-tested it up and down the back road behind the garage until the bike didn't just run. It ran the way it was supposed to run, which is a different thing. A 1953 Panhead running the way it was built to run sounds like an argument settled. He called Ridge. Ridge came the next morning. He came again alone. He walked around the bike once, started it himself, let it idle, listened. He revved it twice gently, the way you rev something you respect. Then he shut it off and looked at Tristan. "What do I owe you?" he asked. Tristan had thought about this. He named a fair price. Labor and parts, nothing added. Not because he was careless about money, but because something about this particular job didn't feel like the right place to be strategic. Ridge reached into his vest and produced a fold of bills. He put them on the workbench without counting. It was more than Tristan had said. "Keep the change," Ridge said. Then, after a moment, "You knew what you were holding when you found that line?" "Yes, and you called anyway." "Yes." Ridge looked at him steadily. "Why?" Tristan thought about it honestly. "Because not calling would have meant deciding it wasn't my problem, and I couldn't make that decision." Something shifted in Ridge's face. Not quite a smile. Something slower than a smile and more permanent. He left. Tristan went back to the Silverado. He went back to the ordinary work of the day, the invoices and the filter changes and the quiet friction of keeping a small business alive. 3 days passed, then 4. He did not think too much about what Ridge had found or what was being done about it. That was not his world. He had done what he could do, which was the one thing he was actually equipped to do. On the 5th day, he heard them before he saw them. It started as a sound in the distance, a low collective rumble that you feel in your sternum before your ears fully register it. Tristan was in the bay, hands inside an engine, and he stopped without knowing exactly why he stopped. He just stopped and listened. The sound grew. He stepped out into the lot. They came down the road in a column. Motorcycles, one after another, filling the 2 lanes in a formation so long he couldn't see the end of it. Not racing at all. Slow, deliberate, the kind of pace that has nothing to prove. They pulled off the road in an orderly line and filled the lot and overflowed into the gravel beside the building and kept coming until the road behind them was empty. Tristan stood in the bay door and didn't move. He counted at some point without meaning to. He got to 140 and stopped counting. There were more than 200 motorcycles. Some of them bore the Northern Shield patch. Others did not. There were clubs from Sault Ste. Marie, from Thunder Bay, from Timmins and North Bay and Espanola. There were independent riders with no patches at all. There were men in their 60s on bikes older than some of the men. There were younger riders who had clearly been called and had come without knowing the full reason, which is its own kind of statement. Nobody spoke. They sat on their bikes in the lot of Tristan Morel's small garage on the edge of Sudbury, and they did not make a sound. Ridge walked out of the column toward him. He was not alone this time. Beside him walked a man Tristan didn't recognize, shorter, older, gray at the temples, wearing the president's patch of a club Tristan knew by reputation only. His name was Clifton Arsenault. He had been in the Northern Shield MC for 31 years and president for 9 of them, and he walked toward a 23-year-old mechanic with the deliberate respect of someone who knows what he owes and does not argue about paying it. Clifton stopped in front of Tristan. He looked at him for a moment without speaking. "We know what you found," he said, "and we know what you did with it." He paused. "A lot of people have seen that bike over the years. You're the first one who looked at it like something worth protecting." Tristan said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't have been inadequate. "We also know," Clifton continued, "that you're carrying a note with a bank that's not being patient anymore." Tristan kept his expression steady. "That's my business to sort out." "It is," Clifton said, "and we're not here to take that from you." He reached into his vest and produced an envelope. He set it on the workbench beside Tristan's left hand. "That's work, not a gift. We've got 11 bikes in the club that need proper attention before winter. Clutches, brake lines, oil changes, 1 carburetor rebuilt. You'll bill us fair, same as you billed Ridge. We don't want a discount. We want the work done right, and we've seen enough to know you do it right." Tristan looked at the envelope. And Ridge said from behind Clifton quietly, "The guy who touched my bike. The guy who set the float and crimped the line and told those 3 shops to say engine." He paused. "We found him. He's not your problem anymore." The lot was still silent. 200 and something riders on 200 and something machines. Not one of them speaking, all of them present. All of them having come a long way to be present. That was the sentence. Not words. Presence. Tristan picked up the envelope. "Tell me when you want to bring the first one in," he said. Clifton almost smiled. "Monday." They left the same way they had arrived. Slowly, in formation, each bike pulling back onto the road in order, the column rebuilding itself and moving away down the highway until the sound was just a low vibration in the distance and then nothing at all. Tristan stood in the empty lot for a while after they were gone. He thought about the Panhead under the lights. About the crimp that someone had put there carefully, deliberately, the way you do something you've thought about. About the 3 shops that had looked and called it an engine problem and sent the bike back on the road. He thought about his uncle Fernand, who had built this garage on the principle that the work speaks for itself, that you do it right or you don't do it, that the difference between a good mechanic and a great one isn't talent. It's what you're willing to be honest about when honesty costs you something. The lot was quiet. The gravel had tire tracks going in every direction from where they'd parked. 200 sets of marks pressed into the ground. Evidence that something had been here. Evidence that was already starting to fade. He went back inside. He had work to do.